Think about the exact millisecond a sudden, intense crisis hits your life.
Oh, yeah, that initial shock.
Right, like not a delayed flight or some minor inconvenience, but the kind of earth-shattering pressure where the ground literally feels like it is dropping out from underneath you.
A truly terrifying moment.
Exactly. A sudden medical diagnosis, a catastrophic financial loss.
Right.
What do you do in that specific moment when your world feels completely unstable? Do you rise to your highest ideals, or do you fall straight back into your oldest, most ingrained habits?
I mean, it is the ultimate stress test of human nature, really.
It really is.
We all love to imagine that in a moment of sheer panic,
Yeah.
we're going to suddenly transform into these pillars of wisdom, right? Making completely rational strategic decisions.
Yeah, we think we'll be the hero of the movie.
Exactly. But psychology, and honestly thousands of years of recorded history, tell a radically different story about what actually happens to the human brain under threat.
Which is really the core of what we are unpacking today. For this deep dive, we are looking at an ancient historical and biblical account about a monarch facing a literal immediate threat of war and, well, utter annihilation.
Yeah, massive crisis.
We are diving into the ancient text of Isaiah chapter 7, and on the surface, this is a very specific geopolitical story about King Ahaz of Judah.
But it's so much more than that.
It is. If you look closer, it is a flawless mirror. It perfectly reflects our own modern reactions to stress, our desperate grasping for control, and our deep-seated fears.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is to figure out what this ancient crisis reveals about human psychology and how you can actually build genuine trust and stability before the pressure hits.
Because the dynamics of fear simply have not evolved in the last few millennia. I mean, the weapons change, right?
Sure, technology changes.
Yeah, and the geopolitical borders shift. But the human heart reacts to the threat of destruction in the exact same way today as it did back then.
Mm-hmm.
And the situation King Ahaz was facing was, genuinely terrifying.
So let's lay out those stakes for a second. You have Ahaz sitting on the throne in Jerusalem, and he is suddenly staring down a massive two-front military alliance.
A literal nightmare scenario for a king.
Right. The king of Syria and the king of Israel, which, by the way, the text also refers to as Ephraim, have joined forces, and they are marching directly on his capital city.
And we really need to understand that this wasn't just like a border dispute or some skirmish over a trade route.
It wasn't a minor conflict.
No, this was an existential threat. The text points out their specific goal. They want to breach the walls of Judah, rip Ahaz off the throne, and install their own puppet king, someone the text simply calls the son of Tabeel.
So it's the complete end of his bloodline.
Utter destruction.
It's political annihilation and personal destruction all rolled into one nightmare scenario. The threat is incredibly real.
Oh, absolutely.
And the text describes the psychological reaction of the king and his citizens with this vivid, almost haunting image. It says his heart and the heart of his people were moved as the trees of the wood are moved with the wind.
I've always loved that phrasing. It captures the pure physics of panic so perfectly.
It really does.
Think about a tree in the middle of a hurricane.
Yeah.
It isn't directing its own movement, It has zero agency.
It's just getting thrown around.
Exactly. It is completely at the mercy of external, invisible forces violently throwing it back and forth. That is what absolute panic does to the human mind.
You lose all your grounding. You are just bending and thrashing in the wind. We see this all the time today, too.
Everywhere.
Like in modern corporate crises or, when rumors of a massive layoff start circulating at an office, the panic spreads like a contagion and people stop making rational choices. They just react to the wind.
Which highlights a vital psychological truth that we see played out in this ancient account. Immense pressure does not create your mindset. It exposes it.
Okay, let's unpack this because that feels like a massive paradigm shift. Pressure exposes your mindset. It doesn't create it.
Right. When stress hits, your default setting matters infinitely more than your best intentions. If you haven't built a root system of internal stability beforehand, a crisis will immediately expose your lack of a foundation.
So that's why Ahaz is freaking out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ahaz is absolutely terrified because his security was entirely external. He relied on his army, his physical walls, his wealth.
All things he could see and touch.
Yes. And when those external things are threatened by an invading army, he has absolutely nothing holding him up on the inside.
So in the middle of this absolute terror, a lifeline appears. God sends the prophet Isaiah, along with his son, to meet King Ahaz.
Mm-hmm.
And the text gives us a very specific, almost bizarrely specific location for this meeting. It happens at the end of the conduit of the upper pool in the highway of the Fuller's Field.
And the detail is so important. The detail of that location tells you everything you need to know about where Ahaz's head is at in that moment.
Why is he there?
He is out inspecting the city's water supply. Jerusalem is facing a brutal siege, and water is the most critical resource for survival in the siege.
Ah, so he's staring at the plumbing.
Literally. He is out there staring at the plumbing, desperately trying to manage his physical security. He is operating entirely in the physical tactical realm, trying to control the uncontrollable.
And right there, while he's frantically trying to secure the aqueducts, God drops this massive, counterintuitive spiritual message.
Yeah, it completely interrupts his panic.
Isaiah walks up and tells the king, "Take heed and be quiet, fear not." He essentially tells him not to be faint-hearted about these two invading kings.
Which sounds crazy to Ahaz, I'm sure.
Right, because in fact, God completely dismisses the threat of Syria and Israel. The text says God calls them two tails of these smoking firebrands.
The contrast in perspective here is just staggering.
How so?
Well, Ahaz looks at this military alliance and sees a raging inferno that is guaranteed to burn his entire kingdom to ash.
Right.
But God looks at the exact same threat and describes them as two smoldering, burned-out twigs. Think about a piece of wood pulled from a campfire. It might still be smoking, it might look messy, but all the heat and destructive power are already gone.
It's just smoke.
Exactly. God is promising Ahaz that this plot to install a puppet king simply will not stand.
God even puts a hard timeline on it, too. He declares that within 65 years, the invading nation of Ephraim will be so completely broken that they won't even be considered a people anymore.
A huge promise.
Huge. But then, right after making this grand promise of deliverance, God states this profound, unbending rule of human nature to Ahaz. He says, "If ye will not believe, surely ye shall not be established."
That single sentence is the hinge of the entire narrative. And honestly, it's the hinge of the human experience with fear.
It really is.
Internal stability determines external outcomes. God is offering perfect security to the kingdom, but it comes with a prerequisite.
Oh, yeah, there's a catch.
It requires Ahaz to let go of his frantic need for physical control and actually choose to trust.
To help him make that leap, God essentially offers Ahaz a blank check.
Yeah, an incredible offer.
God tells the king to ask for a sign. And he makes the scope limitless, saying to ask it either in the deepest depth or in the highest height. God is saying, like, name your miracle. I will bend the laws of the universe right now to prove to you that I am in control.
And what does Ahaz do?
He looks at that offer and just flatly refuses. He says, "I will not ask, neither will I tempt the Lord."
Yeah.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here. Growing up, I was always taught that you are never supposed to test the divine. You don't demand magic tricks, you know?
Right.
When you read Ahaz's response on the surface, it sounds incredibly respectful. Isn't he demonstrating genuine humility by refusing to demand a sign?
What's fascinating here is that it sounds perfectly pious, right?
Yeah.
But the historical context reveals that it is completely hollow.
Wait, really?
Yeah, this isn't spiritual strength, and it certainly isn't humility. It is avoidance, cleverly disguised as religious independence. Ahaz refuses to ask for a sign because he doesn't actually want to trust God. He doesn't want the proof.
Oh, because if God actually splits the sky and proves he has the power to save the city, Ahaz loses his excuse to do things his own way.
Precisely. If God proves his power, Ahaz is obligated to submit to God's methods.
And he doesn't want that.
No, because Ahaz is secretly plotting his own worldly solution behind the scenes. He is looking at the geopolitical map and planning to make a desperate political alliance with the massive, brutal empire of Assyria.
Wow, okay.
He wants Assyria to come down and crush Syria and Israel for him. So he hides behind this surface-level religious excuse like, "Oh, I won't tempt the Lord," because his own pride is blocking the exact clarity he desperately needs.
He rejects divine guidance because he prefers his own illusion of control.
Yes.
It makes me think of someone taking out a massive predatory payday loan to cover their mortgage.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
You know the interest rate is going to destroy you eventually, but it gives you an immediate sense of control today. It solves your panic right now, even if it guarantees your ruin tomorrow. Ahaz is essentially signing the paperwork on a geopolitical payday loan.
He is. And God does not let him just walk away from the offer. Because Ahaz is hiding behind this fake piety and refusing to participate, the text says the Lord himself will give the house of David a sign anyway.
So what is the sign God forces into the narrative?
Well, it becomes one of the most famous prophecies in ancient literature. God declares that a virgin shall conceive and bear a son and shall call his name Emmanuel.
Which means God with us.
Exactly, the name itself is the message. It literally translates to God with us.
And the text follows up with some incredibly specific details about the environment this child will grow up in. It says he will eat butter and honey so that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good.
Hmm.
And it gives a timeline, right? Before this child is even old enough to know right from wrong, the lands of those two kings Ahaz is so terrified of will be completely forsaken.
It is an absolute guarantee of deliverance from the immediate threat. But there is a massive tragic consequence attached to it.
But because of the payday loan.
Yes, because Ahaz refused to trust God and instead turned to the short-term political control of hiring the king of Assyria. God prophesies that Ahaz's chosen method of salvation will become the instrument of his destruction.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The language used to describe this incoming devastation is incredibly visceral. God says he will hiss for the fly that is in the uttermost part of the rivers of Egypt and for the bee that is in the land of Assyria.
Just think about the nature of flies and bees.
We're annoying.
Worse, they swarm. They are relentless. You cannot build a wall high enough to keep them out.
Oh, right.
The text says these massive swarming empires will come and rest in the desolate valleys, in the holes of the rocks, and upon all the thorns and bushes. There will be no escaping them. They will infiltrate every single crack of the kingdom.
Then we get this metaphor that is just jarring. God says he will use the king of Assyria as a hired razor to shave the head, the beard, and the hair of the feet of Judah.
Yeah, a hired razor.
A hired razor. That is an oddly specific and, frankly, intimate threat. Why describe an invading army as a shaving implement?
Well, in the ancient Near East, a man's beard and hair were profound symbols of his honor, his status, and his freedom.
Okay.
Stripping someone of their hair was the ultimate act of humiliation, usually reserved for prisoners of war or slaves.
Oh, wow. So it's about shame.
Completely. And the irony here is thick and intentional. Ahaz hired Assyria to be his protection. And God is saying, the very mercenary you paid to protect you is going to turn on you, strip your kingdom bare, and subject your people to ultimate public shame.
You hired them to save you, and they are going to shave you clean.
Precisely.
And the economic and agricultural devastation that follows this invasion is described as a total collapse. The text talks about places that once had 1,000 vines worth 1,000 silverlings. We are talking about prime, incredibly lucrative agricultural real estate.
The best of the best.
Right. And it says all of it is going to become briars and thorns.
It will become so completely overgrown and wild that men will have to hunt there with arrows and bows just to survive.
Because the farms are gone.
Yeah, the cultivated hills that generations of farmers carefully dug and worked with a mattock, completely abandoned. The text says they will be left for the sending forth of oxen and lesser cattle to just trample over the ruins.
Which actually brings us back to that very specific detail about the sign of the child, Emmanuel. The text said he would eat butter and honey.
Right.
Now, to a modern ear, a diet of butter and honey sounds like, I don't know, a luxury brunch.
Sounds pretty good, honestly.
Yeah. But in the context of this prophecy, why is that a bad thing?
Because it reveals a society that has been reduced to scavenging.
Oh, man.
The text explains that for the abundance of milk that they shall give, he shall eat butter. For butter and honey shall everyone eat that is left in the land.
So they aren't baking bread anymore.
Exactly. There are no more crops. The vineyards are gone. The wheat fields are just briars.
Wow.
The survivors are living off the milk of whatever strayed animals managed to survive the invasion and wild honey they foraged from the ruins. It is the diet of absolute desolation.
The tragedy of that outcome is just crushing. Ahaz chose the Assyrian alliance because he wanted immediate, tangible security. But that short-term fix created a generation-defining disaster.
Which is the ultimate trap of human nature. Control is limited. Not everything that feels like security actually provides it.
Right.
By stubbornly rejecting God's guidance and placing his trust in worldly power, Ahaz literally invited desolation upon his own people. He thought he was buying a shield, but he bought the razor that stripped his kingdom bare.
So what does this all mean? Let's pull this entire narrative completely out of ancient history and bring it right into the room with us today.
I love that. Let's do it.
The text of Isaiah is basically functioning as a mirror. How do we look at our own lives and shift away from the frantic control mindset of King Ahaz and actually build a genuine trust mindset?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the foundational lesson here is that internal stability determines external outcomes.
That's the core of it.
Yeah. The political siege of Jerusalem was just the pressure cooker. It merely revealed the lack of trust that was already inside the king's heart. We have to return to that core phrase. If you will not believe, surely you shall not be established.
It's all about the foundation.
Exactly. If you are not deeply grounded in your trust in God, everything else you try to build your life upon will eventually crumble when the wind blows.
It is so tempting to think like, well, if God would just give me a clear sign, if I just had more tangible evidence that everything is going to be okay, then I would stop panicking.
We all think that.
But the story of Ahaz proves that evidence is completely useless if your mindset is already locked into self-reliance. God literally offered to bend the universe, highest height or deepest depth, and Ahaz still said no.
Because his mindset filtered out the truth. He was already committed to his own backup plan. If we want to strengthen our relationship with God today, we have to stay open to correction. We have to start by recognizing our own internal resistance.
We have to be honest with ourselves.
We really do. We have to examine how often we reject divine guidance or simple biblical principles because we are secretly relying on our own false security.
Right, and our modern Assyria probably isn't an ancient empire with chariots.
Yes.
But what is the predatory loan we take out to feel safe?
That's the real question.
So it might be hoarding money in a bank account at the expense of generosity. It might be, a ruthless dedication to career status, believing a title will protect us from vulnerability.
Right, definitely.
It might even be the immediate numbing relief of an addiction or a massive distraction. When the pressure hits, we run to those things, fully believing they will save us from the panic.
And the mechanism is identical to what Ahaz did. When we refuse to trust what is solid and eternal, we start grasping at what is immediate and temporary.
We choose the quick fix.
Always. But decisions made out of panic, decisions that actively bypass God's guidance for the sake of quick relief, they almost always spawn long-term devastation. Whatever gives you an immediate illusion of control today will often cost you dearly tomorrow.
Because control is merely an illusion, true stability is entirely internal. But, and this is the hardest truth of the whole deep dive, you cannot magically summon internal stability in the exact millisecond the crisis drops.
No.
You have to build that spiritual root system before the storm ever arrives.
Preparation shows up when things get difficult. Ahaz hadn't bothered to build a relationship of genuine trust with God during times of peace.
So he had nothing to draw from.
Exactly. So when the armies of Syria and Israel showed up on the horizon, he had an empty emotional bank account. He collapsed into fear. The reality we have to face is that every single day, in the mundane, quiet moments of life, we are actively building the default response that we will inevitably fall back on.
We are laying the bricks of our foundation right now, today. Are we practicing trust when the waters are calm? Are we leaning on God's wisdom in the small, seemingly insignificant decisions? Because if we aren't establishing that baseline of belief, then when the real threat comes, when the market crashes, when the relationship shatters, we are going to be just like the trees of the wood, violently shaking and completely at the mercy of the wind.
And we might even try to dress up our panic in religious language,
Yeah.
using spiritual-sounding excuses to justify why we are taking matters into our own hands.
Just like Ahaz saying, I will not tempt the Lord.
Exactly. We have to strip away those excuses and be brutally honest with ourselves about where our trust actually resides.
To synthesize all the threads we've pulled together today, this ancient account shows us that fear drives catastrophically poor decision-making. We've seen that avoidance, especially when it is disguised as piety or self-reliance, completely blocks the clarity we desperately need.
Yeah.
And above all, we've seen that true, unshakable stability only comes from a deep, pre-existing trust in God, not from grasping at worldly control or temporary fixes.
This raises an important question, though, to kind of leave things on. We look back at a historical figure like King Ahaz, and it is incredibly easy to judge him.
For sure.
We wonder how someone could refuse a direct sign from God and choose to trust a brutal worldly empire instead. But human nature is identical today. We do this.
We do.
Every day in times of peace, we're building the default we will fall back on during a crisis. So the crucial question you have to ask yourself is, what Assyria are you secretly relying on instead of God? What is your backup plan that is actually undermining your faith?
How will you apply this information in your life?